Ferrari sells roughly 13,000 cars a year. Toyota sells 10 million. By every conventional measure of business success, volume, market share, revenue growth, Ferrari should be an irrelevance, a niche curiosity, a footnote. Instead, it is the most powerful luxury brand on earth. Its profit margin per car is the highest in the automotive industry, by a distance that defies logic. Its wait lists stretch for years. Its used cars sell for more than their original price. And in 2023, its stock market valuation placed it above Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis combined. How does that happen? How does a company that intentionally makes less than the market demands, that turns away paying customers, that has built its entire identity around the idea that you cannot simply decide to own one of their cars? The answer lies in a principle discovered over a century ago by an Italian economist studying pea pods in his garden. It is called the Pareto Principle. And once you see how Ferrari has mastered it, you will never think about scarcity, desire, or the meaning of luxury the same way again. Enzo Ferrari did not set out to build a luxury brand. He set out to go faster than everyone else. Born in Modena in 1918, Ferrari grew up in the age when the automobile was still a novelty, and motor racing was the most glamorous and most dangerous sport in the world. He drove for Alfa Romeo. He managed their racing program, and when the relationship ended in 1939, he did what obsessive people do when institutions can no longer contain them. He built his own. Scuderia Ferrari, the Ferrari stable. A racing team first, a road car company second, and always, always in that order. The road cars were not a business strategy. We were a necessity. Ferrari needed money to fund his racing obsession, and selling road cars to wealthy enthusiasts provided it. But this created something unintended, something far more valuable than he perhaps realized at the time. Every Ferrari sold to a private buyer was a direct descendant of a race car. The technology, the philosophy, the obsession with performance over comfort, all of it transferred from track to road. You were not buying a luxury vehicle with Ferrari badges. You were buying a domesticated racing machine. You were buying Enzo's obsession. That founding DNA, the idea that a Ferrari is a race car you happen to be allowed to drive on public roads, established the brand's core identity from the very first car. It was never about accessibility. It was never about everyone. It was about the few people serious enough, passionate enough, and wealthy enough to understand what they were really acquiring. By the 1990s, the world had changed. The luxury market was exploding. A new generation of ultra-wealthy buyers in Asia, the Middle East, and the Americas were emerging. The demand for Ferrari was not just high, it was intoxicating. Wait lists were growing. Prices were climbing. Every business instinct said the same thing. Scale up, produce more, capture the market while the opportunity exists. And Ferrari felt that pressure, acutely. Other luxury car brands were expanding aggressively. Bentley, Lamborghini, Porsche, all of them growing production, entering new segments, chasing volume. The logic was seductive. If demand exceeds supply, the rational response is to close the gap, meet the demand, grow the revenue, grow the profit. But here is where something interesting happened inside Ferrari, a quiet but profound resistance to that logic. Because the people who understood Ferrari most deeply understood something that the spreadsheets couldn't capture. The wait list wasn't just a production problem, it was the product. The desire wasn't a side effect of scarcity, it was caused by it. The moment Ferrari produced as many cars as the market wanted, the market would want them less. This is the paradox at the heart of true luxury. Accessibility destroys desirability. The thing that makes something coveted is precisely that not everyone can have it. Ferrari wasn't sitting on a production bottleneck that needed solving. It was sitting on the most powerful marketing strategy in the history of business. And most people looking at it from the outside couldn't see it, because it looks, from the outside, exactly like a problem. It isn't. It is the Pareto Principle made flesh and steel and Italian leather. In 1896, an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto was studying the distribution of wealth in his country. What he discovered would become one of the most powerful and most consistently observed patterns in all of economics and nature. Roughly 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. He checked other countries, same pattern. He looked at his garden. 80% of the peas came from 20% of the pods. The Pareto Principle, the 80-20 rule. The observation that in almost any system, a small minority of causes produces a disproportionate majority of effects. 20% of your customers generate 80% of your revenue. 20% of your products create 80% of your profit. 20% of your effort produces 80% of your results. The natural response to this, for most businesses, is to try to flatten the curve, to serve more of the 80%, to democratize the product, to grow. Ferrari did the opposite. Ferrari looked at that curve and leaned into it so hard that the 80-20 split became their entire business model. Here is how. Ferrari does not try to sell to everyone who wants a Ferrari. It curates, it selects. Its most exclusive models, the LaFerrari, the FXX, the Monza SP1 and SP2, are not available for purchase to the general public. No matter how much money you have, Ferrari chooses who gets to buy them. And the criteria are not simply financial. You need a history with the brand. You need to have owned multiple Ferraris. You need to be known in the community. You need, in short, to be a member of the vital few, the 20% of customers who don't just buy a Ferrari, but live the brand, display it, evangelize it, and through their identity and lifestyle, market it more powerfully than any advertising campaign ever could. This is the 80-20 customer in its purest form. One obsessive Ferrari collector appearing at Pebble Beach in a perfectly preserved 250 GTO does more for the Ferrari brand than 100 satisfied customers driving their Californias to the school run. And Ferrari knows this with absolute precision. The intentional scarcity strategy, Ferrari's famous policy of producing one car less than the market demands, is not a production constraint. It's a demand management system of breathtaking sophistication. By ensuring the supply never fully meets demand, Ferrari guarantees two things that no marketing budget can buy. First, the waiting list. The Ferrari waiting list is not a problem to be solved. It's a status symbol of its own. To be on the waiting list for a Ferrari is itself a signal of wealth, taste, and arrival. Second, residual value. Because Ferrari controls supply so tightly, used Ferraris don't depreciate the way ordinary cars do. Many appreciate, some dramatically. A 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO sold at auction for $70 million. $70 million for a car. This is not a collector's anomaly. It is the logical consequence of a company that has spent decades ensuring its products are always rarer than the desire for them. The 80-20 principle extends to Ferrari's product line itself. They don't build family cars. Every resource, every engineer, every ounce of institutional obsession flows into the 20% of the product experience, performance, sound, sensation, design, that creates 80% of the brand's emotional power. And then there's the racing. The Formula One program is not a marketing expense, it's the brand's heartbeat. Ferrari's Formula One presence does not sell cars directly. What it does is ensure that every person on Earth knows that these machines are descended from the most competitive engineering endeavor in motorsport. The track justifies the road. The race car validates the price. Pareto in motion. Ferrari's success is not despite its scarcity. It is because of it. Every decision that looks like restraint is actually leverage. Every car not built is a desire not diluted. Every customer turned away strengthens the resolve of every customer who gets through. Every year on a waiting list deepens the attachment of the person waiting. The Pareto Principle tells us that in any system, a small number of elements carry most of the weight. Ferrari didn't just discover this truth, it built an entire business architecture around it. Product, customer, distribution, marketing, pricing, heritage. Every single dimension of the Ferrari operation is optimized not for the many, but for the vital few. The result is a company whose profit margin is the envy of every industry, whose brand power is measured not in market research surveys, but in 7-decade waitlists and $100 million auction results, whose customers are not buyers, but disciples. Less is not just more. Less done with this kind of intention and this kind of discipline is everything. So what does Ferrari teach us? Not all of us are building luxury car brands, but every one of us, every business, every career, every creative project is operating inside a Pareto distribution whether we acknowledge it or not. 20% of your clients are generating 80% of your revenue. 20% of your skills are making 80% of your impact. 20% of your content is driving 80% of your engagement. The distribution is there. The question is whether you are designing for it or ignoring it. Most people ignore it. They spread themselves across every customer, every opportunity, every platform. They optimize for volume. They chase the 80% of effort that produces 20% of results because it feels like doing more. Ferrari shows us a different discipline. First, identify your vital few. Not your average customers, your obsessed ones. The ones who don't just use what you make, but define themselves by it. The ones who would be genuinely bereft if you disappeared. Build for them first. Build for them always. Second, eliminate distractions. Ferrari does not make family hatchbacks. Not because it couldn't, because doing so would poison the thing that makes Ferrari matter. Every brand has its equivalent of the family hatchback, the compromise that looks like growth and acts like dilution. Find it, say no to it. Third, prioritize impact over volume. Ferrari's most exclusive models are sold to hundreds of people, but their cultural impact is felt by millions. One perfectly placed, perfectly curated thing reaches further than 1,000 adequate things spread thin. And fourth, embrace focused growth. Ferrari grows, but it grows slowly, deliberately, always anchored to the core identity. Every new model strengthens what the brand already means, rather than compromising it. The courage to do less, the discipline to focus on the 20%, the willingness to leave demand unmet rather than meet it at the cost of meaning. That is the Pareto Principle applied not just as a business strategy, but as a philosophy. If Ferrari's mastery of the Pareto Principle and the scarcity code hit different for you, hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this kind of content. Subscribe for more breakdowns of the business strategies and ideas behind the world's most iconic brands, because there are stories like this one hiding in plain sight everywhere. And drop a comment. Where do you see the 80-20 rule at play in your own life or business? I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.